We have invested in over 150 different startups at this point between our 4 funds. So we really have a sense of what makes an academic institution startup tick from early on. We track currently about 10,000 startups out of these academic institution partners. We invest in typically around 10 to 12 new startups per year. Networks are everything. They really will help you do whatever it is that you want to do, be it in science, be it in startups, whatever it is. That will get you leaps and bounds from where you are. Knowing people is a lot of the battle. That's always one of the biggest things I tell people is that the license agreement is just the first step in this relationship, right? You've got the full marriage to go through after that, right? And you have to figure out how to make that the most successful marriage between the startup, its investors.
Welcome back to the Rice Tech Transfer Podcast. My name is Andrew Baines. This podcast is all about spotlighting technologies that have been developed here at Rice University, the companies that have helped take them to market, and the faculty members. For this episode, I wanted to switch things up a little bit. Today, we're going to be interviewing Kirsten Leute. She is a partner of University Relations at Osage University Partners, OUP for short. She has an extensive background in tech transfer at different universities, so essentially helping out with the commercialization of technologies developed at universities. She used to work at Stanford. She's now, like I mentioned, working at OUP. I'm going to talk about her career journey, some of the things that she's seen throughout her career, and much more. So extremely excited to have Kirsten on the show today. Kirsten, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here with you, Andrew.
Likewise. So, hey, I would love for you to just maybe give your elevator pitch of who Kirsten is and what you're most excited about currently.
Yeah, sure. I have been in this business for a very long time now, but basically have had 2 main jobs in my life. So one is being here at OUP, leading up our university relationships. And the previous was being at Stanford University for almost 19 years in their technology transfer office. My current work is focused on the relationships that we have with academic institutions, approximately 140 of them, different ways that we have a relationship with those institutions. But of course, those are the institutions that we're sourcing our deals from to potentially invest in these academic startups out of these particular institutions. So I've been here for 10 years now. It's been a wonderful opportunity, voyage, et cetera, with OUP on this, helping people with their startups, with their tech transfer operations, and getting more portfolio companies under our belt here at OUP. Working at Stanford was also just a terrific joy as well. I really loved my job there in doing technology transfer. I did do tech transfer for 1 year over in Germany as well, so got a little bit of a different experience and flavor there. But I also really felt that job was a great fit for me. So overall, I've been incredibly fortunate because I feel like for the bulk of my career, I've been in jobs that were very good fits for me.
Nice. And what's something that you're working on right now that you're like really excited about that's maybe coming up or a big event or anything like that?
Well, so I wouldn't say this is a big event, but one of the areas of focus that I've had for this particular year is on the university venture funds that have been popping up actually over many, many years, where universities invest themselves in startups coming out of their academic institutions, particularly providing that kind of early stage pre-seed money that many of their startups need, but that is so hard to come by, and working with institutions, with the people who are starting those particular funds or have been associated with them for a long time, and then those people who are really doing the new ventures work at the universities as well. So perhaps not just having the purse strings for those initial funds, but helping bring in talent, helping give advice to those startup companies. They're kind of percolating in the minds of the faculty members, grad students, postdocs, whatever they may be. And then that also, of course, touches on my work on Equalize startups, which is a kind of offshoot of what I do. And I know we're going to get to talk about later, which I'm excited about.
No, exciting stuff. Yeah, I went to autumn. Oh man, I guess it was like 2024. I missed this year. And like the venture funds at different universities, that was like one of the hottest topics. A number of universities and institutions were giving presentations on how they're starting funds, how they're investing. It seemed like a lot of universities starting evergreen funds. So essentially like trying to start a fund, invest in the startups to the point where, hey, we're going to at least recoup our, initial investment. So exciting stuff that you're getting to work on over there. And it's
Yes.
cutting edge for sure.
Absolutely exciting. Yes. And all of them are kind of figuring out what the missions of these funds are, what their purpose is, and where they can make the most impact with those funds.
Gotcha. Hey, a little bit off script, but like, have you seen any institutions or universities that you feel like, hey, they're kind of like on the leading edge in terms of building the fund the right way and, maybe some lessons learned people can take from that?
Yeah, and so that I think that really depends on the environment that they're in, the support that they get from their administration, from their local ecosystem, et cetera. We actually did a webinar earlier this year on university venture funds, so I would just tell people to go check that out. And because we had 3 of the funds on there talking about what they have developed themselves.
Okay, they got to go check out the replay. What's your website, by the way? OUP.
It's oup.vc. Super simple. oup.vc. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you just search on YouTube for Osage University Partners, you will find our YouTube channel. And that particular webinar is on there. We have a whole bunch of webinars on there if anybody wants to go see some of our content.
All right, nice. So yeah, I definitely recommend you guys do that. Kirsten, you mentioned it earlier. Like, I'm looking at your LinkedIn now. I should have did this when I was doing your intro, by the way, so I didn't butcher your title. But you literally like have 3 different jobs on here, like Stanford, tech transfer, like 2 different stints, and then you have I'm assuming this is the German or the
German Cancer Research Center, Deutsches Krebsforschungszentrum. Yes.
Okay, I was like, none of these words should be next to each other. This is not English. I was like, I'm not even going to try. And then OUP. So like, how did you start what made you start your career like working in tech transfer at Stanford?
Yeah. So I love telling this story. I feel like maybe it's old to a lot of people at this point. So so I started in tech transfer on a lark. It wasn't actually something that I had meant to do in any way. So after I graduated from college, so I graduated with a degree in biology. I worked in a lab for a couple of years and I got, finished that experience and I was like, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to work in a lab. And I went and traveled around the world for 6 months and I came back and I knew what I wanted to do with my life. And that was, I wanted to be a medical illustrator. And
Wow.
so I hadn't done art in college. I just kind of done it on the side. And so I decided to do some more prereqs in that. I'd done a bunch in high school. And so I was doing prereqs to apply for these MFA programs. And at the same time, I was doing part-time jobs. So I was getting these part-time positions. And what was funny was that each of the part-time positions, people said, hey, do you want to work for us full-time? And I was like, no, I'm going to go to school. I'm just doing my prereqs,
Okay.
And the third place that I worked at was OTL as the temporary receptionist. And and they asked me if I wanted to be the receptionist. And I said, no, I'm gonna go get my MFA. I'm just doing these, things. And but I kept working there like even longer because they needed a part-time receptionist for longer. And I got to know the people in the office and what they were doing. And I'm like, this is really interesting. And they ended up having a job opening for what was called at the time a licensing assistant. Mm-hmm. And I had the right background to be a licensing assistant, in part because I had this degree in biology. And I thought, you know what, I'll just finish all my prereqs at night because I really like these people and I'd like to work here. And so I took the job as a licensing assistant. And then I got involved in the work and I'm like, this is fascinating. I loved going to inventor meetings. I liked sitting in on negotiations. I liked doing the wordsmithing on agreements. Back then we did a ton of marketing. Like marketing was like an all-day effort. And you would like be looking through things up in books and sources and stuff and figuring out who would possibly be interested in this particular technology and things like that. And so I stopped doing my prereqs for an MFA and I applied to business school programs instead. So I, at one point, was known as the person at Stanford's OTL who had the most position titles throughout my career. It was something like 6 between like all the different positions I had at OTL. And I did my MBA at night and stayed in the business. And I loved it. And I honestly thought I would never leave it.
Wow. No, that's hilarious. I like that you got a chance to kind of take that break to kind of, backpack and figure things out. But it's funny that your moment of clarity is like, okay, hey, I want to, be an illustrator, and you completely like pivoted from that entirely. Hey,
Totally
you,
pivoted from it. It's funny because when I talk with kids now, like, so I get sometimes asked to like go give talks to, like kids for like what they're thinking about doing. I'm like, you think you know what you're going to do right now. And a
Mhm.
lot of you may attain that, but your path, can take many different avenues and be open to what those avenues may be. So, and that kind of is actually my experience in general with Stanford and the opportunities that were afforded to me is, be open to, where the different paths could possibly lead you and don't necessarily shut something off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've yet to meet the person who said, "Hey, I went to school to be in tech transfer," or "That was my dream job," starting off, or even an investor or something like that. Like I have not met that person at all. I've met people that, hey, they were like, "I'm always entrepreneurial." Like I had a lemonade stand and all this, but never met anybody yet that said, "Hey, I wanted to be in tech transfer from the beginning." So,
Right.
not too surprised there.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear from most people like that the stay in it a long time, like I'm really fortunate that I fell into this. Right.
Absolutely.
And I know that has changing, like that it is becoming something that people do start thinking of earlier in their careers. But, back when I started for sure, most people are like, I just fell into it and got lucky.
Yeah, it's kind of like this hidden gem. So you had 6 different jobs while working at Stanford,
Yeah.
or job titles, I should say. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that, well, even before that, like how was it getting the MBA? Like, was that beneficial to your job? Do you feel like that kind of helped you fill some gaps that maybe you had from like a business acumen standpoint, or what?
I think it was mainly good for my resume, honestly. Like I'm gonna be totally frank there. But so I did do it at night. And there were things that as I was going along that I could right away apply to my work and how I was dealing with situations or my processes and operations and things like that. So I would say it was beneficial in that way. But unlike most people in, I'd say, tech transfer, I don't have a PhD.
Mm.
And so there are other attributes that I can bring perhaps by having that business degree, having that business experience that I can't bring to the table because I don't have as deep of a scientific background as other folks.
That is a good point to note. Like most people have a PhD, if not that, maybe a master's degree. But I think that the business acumen, being able to understand P&Ls and maybe financial projections, that's something that a lot of people may not have from an academic standpoint. So, a new superpower for you there. You had these different roles within the Stanford Tech Transfer Office or licensing office. Do you have like maybe a license deal that you can recall that like is really like top of mind, or like one that you were really excited or passionate about that you've done during your time at Stanford?
Oh, I worked with a lot of people repeatedly. So there were people who came back, researchers who came back again and again. And then there were lots of attorneys that I worked with repeatedly. And then there were entrepreneurs who I worked with repeatedly. Um, I'd say one of the ones that I remember the best, and I'm not going to say their name because I don't have, I haven't talked with them about this ahead of time, but um, was I had negotiated a deal with this one faculty startup company who he was very good about enabling the people in his department to start their companies, and he would have maybe sometimes a role, sometimes not, etc. But this particular company, what I remember most about it was the business development person that I negotiated with it. We would get together for lunch every quarter. And so it wasn't about the initial agreement itself, which did go very well, by the way. Like they were fast at returning to me. I was fast at returning to them. But we would have lunch almost every quarter, and just talk about updates with each other's lives, but also with updates of what was happening with the company. So that when something did come up that wasn't according to plan, what we did initially decided in the license agreement, I usually knew ahead of time that this was coming up and that we would, need to do an amendment or something else associated with it. And I would, start talking with people like this works really well. If we had this constant communication flow between the startup and myself as the main licensed person, it made everything easier down the line as far as the pivots that are going to happen with a startup company. So that's always one of the biggest things I tell people is that, the license agreement is just the first step in this relationship, right? You've got the full marriage to go through after that, right? And you have to figure out how to make that the most successful marriage between, the startup, its investors, it's the commercial interest otherwise they're receiving, and the university go as smoothly as possible, so that when the hiccups do come, which they will come, you can deal with in best manner as possible, because everyone's in the know as to what's going on as much as they're able to talk about it, obviously, considering that we may not have a full confidentiality agreement assigned or something like that. So it was more about, I would say that I always concentrated a lot on that, was how to maintain a really good relationship once the license was signed, just not to be like, I'm just going to get this license signed and try to do the max deal possible and not worry about it afterwards.
I think that's good advice as well. The more you communicate, I always tell people like overshare. I don't want to see something and find out about it for the first time on like a press release or something like that. Like,
Right.
I would appreciate a heads up on, good or bad news. If it's bad news, at least just give me a heads up so like we can talk about, mitigation and how we can kind of resolve the issue at hand. So great advice there as well. You worked at Stanford for quite a while, and then you moved over to OUP. Just curious, like what was that, transition like? That's a big jump to go from working in the university and the tech transfer side, but what inspired the transition to go from Stanford tech transfer over to OUP, and what
Yeah.
was the mindset change that kind of came with it?
Yeah. It was not something that I had expected to do. I really thought that tech transfer was just, the absolute right fit for me. It was where I was going to be staying forever. I loved the people I worked with at Stanford. I loved the people in our industry in Autumn. And fortunately, in my new job, I still get to work with all those people. So, and now I get to do it in a much broader sense, because I get to work with people in tech transfer across the US and across the globe, honestly, because we do have non-US or outside of US partners as well. So when OUP first approached me about the position, I think I was kind of at that mind, like, well, I don't plan to leave Stanford. I don't plan to leave tech transfer. But what really interested me about the position was that I got to see this broad base of what was happening across institutions. And then I really loved all of my work with Autumn and being able to do all of that as well. And then I, got to meet the people there. And I mentioned before that part of the reason I, stayed at OTL was because I had gotten to know the people and their work, and it was so interesting. And I thought the same thing of OUP, is that here they were looking at all of these opportunities out of academic institutions, getting to see this huge swath of technologies in such various areas, and to be able to see that and hone in on the ones that they potentially would like to invest in. That seemed like a real opportunity to me, then to work on maintaining and enhancing those relationships with those institutions, as well as looking at new institutions that we potentially could partner with and learn about their startup opportunities. So it was really about broadening the scope of who I could work with, right? And then also working with what I thought was a really great team of people who were looking at these opportunities. So just some of the smartest people I've ever met, who were very interested in bringing on someone who had a skill set that I thought that paired very well with who I am.
And I know you're, partner for university relations. You're working on building and maintaining those relationships with universities. But I guess for our viewers, what does a typical day-to-day look like for you? And then how are you building these strong partnerships with universities?
Yeah. So my day to day is never the same. It's always different. I was telling Andrew earlier when we were first starting this, is like my kids always say, "Mom, you're on a lot of calls. You talk with a lot of people all the time," and that is a lot of it. So, I mean, any relationships position is you are learning from people, and you are also providing information to people. So a lot of what I do is people ask me, because we see what's happening across so many institutions, is a lot of people reach out to me and say, do you see what anyone is doing in, this particular area? Like I mentioned earlier about university venture funds. We got a lot of questions on that. So we've been doing more work on that particular area. We got a lot of questions about things like that really in our bailiwick of university startups, right? Academic institution startups. That is our bailiwick. And so we like to see ourselves very much as informational experts in those areas, but also in the building of those startups in general, because we have seen so many of them. We have invested in over 150 different startups at this point between our 4 funds. So we really have a sense of what makes an academic institution startup tick from early on. We track currently about 10,000 startups out of these academic institution partners. We invest in typically around 10 to 12 new startups per year. And we track these startup opportunities sometimes for quite a long time, through their entire early days, through their maturation, et cetera. We invest in startups, sometimes in those early rounds that they have, those seed or Series A rounds, but sometimes in their later rounds as well. So we track these companies over time. We see where we feel is kind of the right place for us potentially to invest in those startup companies. So that's been really fascinating for me, for making that leap from an academic environment to now this fund environment, is to see how an investor makes their decisions on which companies to invest in and when, because it's not always about like this being a great technology, but is it a great technology and team and opportunity right now?
Nice. I got a number of follow-up questions for you there. I guess number one, like leveraging, your experience working in a tech transfer office, but then also, you mentioned over 150 startups that you guys have invested in, and maybe about 10 to 12 a year. Like, just in your own personal opinion, like what are some things that you've noticed like successful startups be able to do versus non-successful startups? Or like what are maybe some, I think right now a lot of people are interested in doing startups, and universities are, pushing them more and more. Everybody's trying to see how many startups they can get coming out. But I guess like from your point of view, like what are some things that successful startups have been able to do?
Yeah. Well, so this is the obvious answer, but it does not, it doesn't bear not repeating. Like it really is worth repeating, is that it does come a lot down to the people that are associated with the startup. You obviously are looking at like, is this technology, this product opportunity, market opportunity great? Is it for right now, et cetera? But who are the people behind this, and who are going to be executing it? And so when you're looking at these early stage startups from the academic institutions, you're looking at who is leading that on the business side, who's leading it on the technology side, and how do they work together? So often we're seeing, pitches from these startups where it's involving multiple people who have different domains within that startup company. And we're seeing how they work together. Have they worked together before? How are they doing on this pitch together? Who defers to whom based on what topics? How does the relationship seem? You can usually tell pretty quickly in a conversation how a relationship is working. So I know people talk about your team members a lot, but it just cannot be emphasized enough how important that team is. We get a lot of questions, especially from first-time founders, from faculty founders, grad student founders, postdoc founders, et cetera, about how they find that business development team expert, go talk with your tech transfer office. They may have resources. They have mentor in residence programs. They have executive in residence programs. You can go talk with your business school, try to find people that way. You can talk potentially with alumni out of your university, help with that. There are a lot of ecosystem accelerators that may be able to help you with this as well. At the same time, the researchers themselves, they're learning from these business experts as well, learning the vocabulary, how a cap table works, et cetera. They're learning from these people too. And eventually they get to the point of being at least more expert in those areas as well. But it is really about those team members who are potentially bringing this opportunity forward. So that is like usually my major thing that I talk about. I know everyone does, but it is so critical. And I know that when we're looking at that opportunity, we're very heavily looking at who is this team? Do they have the skills to take it forward? Or do they have an idea of what else they need? What are their investors telling them and other advisors telling them what they need? And how are they going to take those next steps to get this product potentially to market or whatever the opportunity is that they're taking forward?
Yeah, no, valuable advice. And people need to replay it over and over. I know you said it's already been mentioned, but you can't say it enough, honestly. And it's interesting thinking about like how technical from like a science and engineering standpoint, a lot of these technologies are. But at the end of the day, a lot of times the success of the company, or maybe all the time, the success of the company depends on like that psychology or those relationships and the communication and the team building aspect of it. So all those like core soft skills and how people work together collectively in order to make it a successful startup, and not just having like an amazing technology. You still need the other part as well, the people component. So glad you mentioned that there. Hey, so 140, 150 investments you guys have made, about 10 to 12 every single year. Like, how does OUP decide, which startups to invest in? I know a lot of times you guys have participation rights. So meaning, let's say the university receives an equity stake as part of in an equity stake within the startup company as part of the license agreement. We may include participation rights in there, and we may assign those rights to you, and you may act on that. But how do you guys, necessarily decide on average one startup a month out of the thousands that are out there? How do you make that tough decision?
Yeah. So we have, I'm on our university relations team. We have a large investment team as well. They're divided into two major industry sectors. So one is our life science investment team. They look at opportunities in therapeutics, medtech, research tools, diagnostics. They focus very heavily on the therapeutics area. And then we have our tech team, or physical sciences team, whatever in the university parlance you want to use for that particular area. And they kind of look at everything else. So anywhere that's deep science that academic institutions are inventing in, that's potentially where we're investing in. So we're focused on investing in deep science opportunities out of these academic institutions. And so each one of those teams, as they are the ones who are digging into these potential startup companies. And as you know, exactly where you may be interested as far as sub-industry areas in there, those change over time. We are typically an investor. We co-invest with other investors in each one of the companies that we invest in. So we're not usually being the only money in to a company. And so we're co-investing with other folks as well. So some of our investment decisions have to do with like, who are the co-investors who are going to be involved with it? We can't be the only investor in this particular company. Who are the people associated with it? Who are going to be taking this forward? How much is it that they need right now? What are they going to accomplish with that particular money? Where does that get them to? What are they going to need to be doing after that? So the diligence process is a huge process. It's a huge part of each investment decision that we make, is the diligence that we go through on this. And it's very intense that our team goes through on evaluating each of these opportunities. Too long for this discussion by far. But, and I only am partially, involved in those particular conversations, but there's a lot of discussion about what we should invest in, and then a lot of people that they are then talking to make those decisions. With the people involved in the company, with KOLs, who know the areas, with the other potential investors in the particular company, et cetera. So there's just a lot that goes into making each one of those decisions. We do a lot of investments per year. 10 to 12 is quite a few for the size of our fund and for the size of our team. So I'm always really impressed with how much work our team is doing on making each one of these decisions about the companies that we invest in. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of a flavor of how we make those decisions, because it is so complex, but it takes all of those factors that I mentioned. So it's team, market opportunity, regulatory pathways that are needed, how they're going to be using the funds, the IP associated with it, et cetera. There's just a whole host of things that come into making each one of those decisions.
And you mentioned that you guys are not the only ones, investing in a particular round. Is it still or is it a requirement that it has to be academic IP that they're licensing or building the startup company around? Or do you guys ever make any exceptions to that?
There are sometimes exceptions to that as well. And it's also, our model was founded also around the idea of investing through participation rights that the universities have in their license agreements, that they could assign those participation rights to us. And we then share a portion of our profit based on how those companies perform for the fund versus the overall performance of the fund. So that's what we have as a profit sharing model with the academic institutions. But so yeah, it depends very much on the opportunity that we are looking at. Most of them are from the academic sphere, and a lot of them involve participation rights. But even when they involve participation rights, and we're making those investments through participation rights, you still have to have been building the relationships with the founders, with the university, with the other investors, et cetera, in order to make this a deal that everyone is excited about. This is, my business obviously is a relationship business, working with the universities, but making investments is a relationship business, very much so as well. And so that's something else that our team is, always working on as well, is those relationships with the potential startup companies and all those who are going to be involved with them.
Absolutely. You got to get those touch points. Can't just show up asking for money with your hand out. So building that relationship is key. Last OUP question for you before we jump into Equalize. I know you're excited about that. But on the OUP side, do you have maybe one success story that you can share in terms of, maybe a startup company that OUP has invested in that's gone on to do great things?
Yeah. I actually, and it's impressious because she's just a wonderful person too, because I always like to highlight the people who are associated with these startup companies. So, and I had her on one of our webinars earlier this year, Laura Schewel, who was the CEO of StreetLight Data. They were acquired by Jacobs a couple of years ago now, maybe a few years ago now, but basically, she's amazing. We knew about her startup company long before we actually invested in them. They basically do big data for transportation planning.
Okay.
And it was an opportunity out of Berkeley. Got to know her early on. I mean, our tech team did, talked with her over the time that she started the company as a grad student. She went through, I think, her first couple of rounds. We eventually became an investor, but not in the initial rounds. But we saw what she was doing, how the company evolved, et cetera. With grad students, with postdocs, et cetera, anyone who takes on this initial CEO role for the first time, it's a lot of development and figuring out, what skills you currently have, what skills potentially you could attain, and what skills maybe you need out of somebody else as well. And so, she just did a wonderful job of, obviously having a lot of skills initially, but also developing additional skills, along the way, and just becoming a really stellar CEO. So, I guess that's one that I would highlight, in part just because I did that webinar with her earlier this year. Was so pleased that she could join us for that and talk about her own experience of starting a startup as a grad student.
No, that's awesome. And I think a lot of grad students have seen maybe the social network, and maybe they see the glamorization of startups. I think the reality is that it's a lot harder than what people think. And I've had grad students flat out tell me that before as well. But I think it's great to highlight those success stories, especially for someone to go from a grad student into a CE role and then be able to exit through acquisition. That's an amazing story. And I'll have to check that one out on your website as well.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, so I hinted at it a couple of times. You hinted at it as well a couple of times. Let's talk about Equalize. So you co-founded the Equalize program to support women academic founders. Where'd this come from? This is out of, it sounds very interesting, but what inspired this?
Yeah. So I co-founded Equalize along with Nicole Mercier from WashU. She had a program at WashU that was focused on women and their startups. We co-founded Equalize to create a nationwide program for women academics interested in doing startup companies, because we knew that we've been working in this field for a lot longer, that women were disclosing at lower rates than their male counterparts at the institutions, going for parity as far as, just the number of faculty positions they have, lower disclosure rates, and lower founding of company rates by far. And so we had done, inquiries into this and what would help with this. There's a paper that she and I think like 6 other people contributed to, where we actually did a survey of women and what the hurdles were that they were experiencing into their startup journeys. And so we decided to create this nationwide program because we know that sometimes creating something on a smaller scale, you may not have as many resources available to you. Plus, we also thought that we could cross-pollinate a lot more if we created a nationwide program, and we could pull mentors and other resources from different places. So Equalize is a launch pad for startups out of academic institutions, particularly for women startup founders. And we focus on mentorship, education, and networking for these women. It culminates in a pitch competition at the very end. But the main 3 areas that I just mentioned are what they get a 6-month program out of. It runs January through June of each year. Our applications are currently open, depending on when this podcast gets out. They are due on November 14th, 2025, for those who would be interested in applying. We have 4 areas of research areas that of focus for Equalize. They are therapeutics, medtech, tools, which we count as research tools and digital tools, and then physical sciences. And so we are hoping to accept up to 10 women in each one of those cohorts. So a total of 40 women in the program overall for 2026. We pair them up each one-on-one with a domain expert mentor for those 6 months that I mentioned, where they hone their business idea and develop a pitch deck towards pitching at that end pitch competition that I mentioned. They receive approximately like 18 training sessions. Those are all virtual. Most of the program is virtual. And then we have networking components. Where they network with each other and they network with other folks as well, including that we pay for all of them to go to an in-person experiential learning day. It has been in Cambridge, Massachusetts the last 2 years. It will be again in 2026, where we fly them all in for this learning day where they get to network with each other and they get to network with the environment in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They also get to do some speed pitching, hearing from local entrepreneurs, getting to go to local accelerators, getting to meet local investors, et cetera, and hopefully establishing, these bonds that will continue to help each other as a peer network as well going forward. So as you mentioned, we're just entering our 7th year for this. We're very excited about it and have really appreciated all the support that we received from folks. We actually, I counted it up this year. We had about 140. I don't know why in this podcast, I love the number 140, but we had about 100. We had about 140 volunteers helping us this last year with Equalize, and so we're really appreciative of all the support that we received. And just are hoping to, get more women to be able to launch their startups and just helping our economy in general with these new startup companies.
No, that's phenomenal work. Definitely, keep it up. It's much needed. Hopefully you get 140 plus, applicants this year. I'm sure you'll get a lot of good talent coming your way. So I'm excited to see, what comes of that. And I will do my part in making sure that this podcast episode comes out before November 14th so that we can try to get the word out there even more and let people know what you're doing. I have at least a handful of faculty members in my portfolio that I can think of that may be interested in this. So, I'll definitely pass that along as well.
Well, that would be so wonderful. Thank you so much. If anyone wants to find out more about Equalize, the URL is just equalizestartups.org. So
Equalizestartups.org. Nice. Check it out. Hey, so I can't let you gave me one success story already from the OUP side, and that was a young woman who was a grad student and, became successful there. Do you have another woman that maybe you want to spotlight or, not to neglect one over another, but
we love celebrating all of our successes at Equalize. Actually, I'm not going to mention a certain person right now, in part because one of the things that we hear from the Equalizers out of the program. So my first startup company now, I actually can take with me, and I'm excited to do in my next startup. But I also learned so much that I actually have taken back to my lab with me that has been effective for me. So that is another thing that's really interesting, is that some of the things that we're able to teach with people in Equalize aren't things that are only great for these potential businesses, but they also may help them in other aspects of their work as well.
Nice. Hey, and then the last question, what advice would you give to universities that want to better support women and underrepresented inventors becoming founders?
Figure out what it is that they need next and help them get there, and help them find things. What we have found is that a lot of people, and I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but so a lot of time people don't know what they don't know. And so sometimes they just need someone to guide them there. And so, provide them a link to your tech transfer office or to your accelerator or to someone who has done it before, and just sit down and have a coffee with them or whatever it is. So just put them in touch with people. It's like I mentioned, when it comes with, components of the program is networking. Networks are everything. They really will help you do whatever it is that you want to do, be it in science, be it in startups, whatever it is. That will get you leaps and bounds for where you are. Knowing people is a lot of the battle.
Kirsten, this has been a lot of fun. Like, I really appreciate you coming on here.
It's been so much fun.
For sure.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me, inviting me, to talk with you. And
For
hopefully,
sure.
if people have any questions or about OUP or about Equalize, always happy to answer them, and just feel free to reach out to me.
So with you saying that, like, how can people find you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
The best way is just to reach out to me through email, kleute@oup.vc. Or, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Like, that's, I answer all my LinkedIn messages.
Cool. All right. They're going to hold you to it. They're going to be hitting you up. But Kirsten, this was a lot of fun again. Thank you so much. Thank you all for who are watching this. I appreciate you guys staying tuned and checking out this episode. Make sure you come back next week. We plan on having some more great content for you guys. Take care and talk to you soon.
Thanks again, Andrew.